Perhaps I can start this vlog from yesterday. I managed to do a kind of spell of writing in a cafe. I met up with some family, and they were doing their own work, and managed to work on the letter to send my mum. And that's been quite a heavy process for me to do, to get in a position to sort of articulate a lot in a short space, and pick and choose what I want to say in a letter, and sort of not go into detail as well, just kind of write a sort of a concise sort of explanation about my point of view and my health, just some explanation and clarity. I think that was the sort of main driving force, not to kind of offload everything in detail and go into all of the history and stuff, but just to communicate a few points, main points that make it hard to have a relationship at the moment. So I think I was able to do that, so that was good. It's kind of talking about that sort of spark that I had the other day, and perhaps I've gained a little bit of momentum. I don't know if momentum's the right word. I think it is. But I guess I've tried to get on with things. I don't know how else to really put it, without thinking too much about it. So, for example, I think this morning I just sort of did my routine of showering, the medicated shampoo and medicated moisturizer, all of that process. And it was still quite heavy, but perhaps it was less resistance to do it. And after that, I kind of stuttered a little bit in my momentum. I was kind of showering, and then I thought I'd give my foot exercises a rest for the day, and I was kind of thinking, what should I do for the rest of the day? And there was kind of some thoughts about, maybe just to quickly jump back to yesterday, I also did a little bit of fiction editing as well, so that's something I'll talk about a bit more later on in the vlog. So back to this morning, I was kind of almost standing in the middle of my sort of living space here, just trying to figure out what to do. And it was one of the difficulties I mentioned in a previous recording about sort of organising myself, and I guess there's been a bit of a positive energy with food recently, where I've had a bit more energy to cook, and in contrast, it's not like regular cooking, but my cooking was so sparse. It was such a gap between sort of cooking a meal that could last, more than one day, and I kind of, maybe there's a little bit of momentum in that. And so I was thinking, okay, I don't have any meals made, perhaps I need to do that, and in order to do that I need to get some groceries. So I went to a supermarket. That's one I don't usually go to. It's another it's close to the one I usually go to, but often the reason I don't go there is because it's quite, the style of it is quite narrow, and it's quite, in regards to my sort of difficulties, it's quite triggering to go there, where it's really hard to try and put a finger on it, but it's just I kind of avoid going there. Grocery shopping for me is challenging enough, and I think to myself, unless there's, and they don't really sell a whole lot of things different. Sometimes they have like a different selection in regards to like vegan or vegetarian sort of like burgers and things, or sort of items I'd use to have with my sandwiches at lunchtime. So that was the driving force there, just to sort of go there to see what they have. But I found it a really difficult experience, to kind of narrowness, and even though I kind of went in the morning at a time that I thought would be less busy than other times of the day, it was still fairly busy, and I found it hard to sort of navigate around people. And in the other supermarket I go to, the aisles are so much wider, not so much wider, but wider enough that it sort of reduces, things are spaced out a bit more, so it's still challenging, but it reduces that sort of difficulty. And as that task is difficult enough, it's always easy to go with the path of sort of least resistance, or the less painful path. Anyways, I made it back from there, and there was a kind of sense in me, okay, I'm gonna try and cook this afternoon and evening. I bought a few vegetables to cook with, to make a meal out of that, and I even I didn't have any coffee or breakfast before leaving, or nothing. So after I'd gotten back and sort of packed away the groceries, I was quite hungry, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I can either have a sort of unhealthy meal. I bought a couple of frozen pizzas. I could either have that now, and I was just thinking to myself, I feel tired to try and make a sandwich, and then I sort of pushed myself to do that. I kind of washed an avocado and opened it and realised it hadn't properly ripened. It feels like sort of ripening avocados and waiting for them to ripe, or knowing if it's not obviously kind of soft, and it can be a bit of an art. It feels like, or it just feels like a hassle sometimes when they're not already ripe. And anyway, that's a whole separate avocado thing. But yeah, I kind of pushed myself to make a sandwich, and I bought these sort of falafel sweet potato burgers that I would have on the side, and then I realised I didn't have any tomatoes, and I was feeling tired to wash a lot of ingredients, so I decided to just have the burger inside the sandwich, and then just have some lettuce. I managed to wash some lettuce and cut some onion, and I was kind of conscious about trying to have something healthy on the healthier side as well. So I managed to, sort of feeling exhausted and hungry, I managed to kind of make that, and I kind of sort of held the intention to cook a meal this afternoon, evening, which hasn't happened. And also there was the intention to record some podcast episodes as well, and that hasn't happened. I kind of after lunch I had a coffee and then sort of rested a little bit more, and I guess it's good to take in consideration yesterday of sort of going out and doing some writing. So that was like a kind of tiring day for me, and then getting the groceries this morning. It just felt like I was watching was kind of caught in a bit of a YouTube loop of watching some boxing videos and chess videos. There was a kind of fight happening this weekend, and there's sort of chess drama going on, right? So it's kind of watching those and kind of fell into a bit of a daze, a bit of a physical daze and by the time I knew it, it was creeping up to like mid-afternoon, late afternoon, and it was kind of the time, if I was to cook, I needed to do it then, and then it kind of just started creeping past that, almost like, sort of walking outside while the sun's setting and you want to catch the last bit of light, but as the sun sets and seconds tick by, it's kind of less likely to kind of be able to go outside. And so I'm kind of here in the early evening, trying to figure out dinner. It's likely, I'm just going through the options, and pizza seems the easiest option, and it doesn't feel like my body wants it or feel good to have that. And I guess also one of I think during that time of coming up to sort of later afternoon, where I was thinking, okay, if I need to cook, I need to do it now, I realised the vegetables and the things I'd used, there's not a huge amount of protein in there, and there was something in me that's just a bit more aware of right now. Maybe it's the momentum of food, just a balance of carbs, protein, and that kind of aspect of food. And it just, I think it was, I don't know if it's a bit of rationalisation, but it made it easier to think, okay, let's not cook tonight. I need to maybe grab like a can of black beans or something that has a bit of protein to add to it. Maybe I can do that tomorrow. So, and then, I think for the podcast stuff, I just, maybe it's just my energy, and I'm not sure how I'm feeling about the podcast at the moment, because I think as of late, the last few weeks, in terms of being present, and on the spiritual side of things, to kind of, whether it's the dissociation, but it's really sort of interfering with my ability to try and be present and mindful, and only like in the last hour I was kind of thinking about, okay, maybe the next time I record a podcast episode, I can just talk through that. It doesn't necessarily have to be a meditation or sort of me being spiritual in a sense, or giving, because I often find when I record a podcast episode, I feel like I'm struggling with my energy right now, but I'll try and kind of push through what I want to say. But I kind of treat it almost like a meditation, like I have to kind of step into that mindful space to be able to speak from that. And but maybe this podcast episode can be less of that, and maybe just more of me sharing how I'm not in that space, because it is in a sense me sharing my journey. And so I want the podcast to be accessible, so I can kind of I don't have to be in a sort of, a spiritual present space to record, even though often I am, and I get a lot out of it by doing that. But I need to remember that the podcast is not about that. It's about sort of sharing my journey, and right now it's a struggle to kind of be present during my day and experience the benefit of that. So it was kind of almost a moment of looking at the podcast from a different angle, or reminding myself there is different angles to it, even though I've, for a long sort of duration of time, I've approached it from one angle, which has been fine, because that's been my doorway into it, where I've been very mindful and in that energy. So I've kind of recorded from that place, and now I'm struggling with that. I'm just reminding myself that there's a doorway to record my my energy, how my energy is now. It doesn't have to be a sort of perfect spiritual teacher energy where I'm in this very zen space and I'm giving these examples of all these great sort of spiritual pointers, it can be more of a diary, a journal, and it was something, staying on the podcast stuff, it's something I used to record, sort of a journal entry on the podcast and call it a journal entry. So maybe I've kind of forgotten that, where I've been doing more readings, finishing off the readings of the book A New Earth, so it feels like I've kind of forgotten that side of the podcast. So and maybe it'll make it more accessible and easier for me to do with the way I'm feeling now. It's a lot more inviting and enjoyable and accessible to record a sort of reflection or journal, sort of spiritual journal entry of the podcast, versus trying to get material from one of the the books that I've kind of trying to read at the moment. I feel myself struggling to articulate, really feeling that at the moment. There's lots of stuff I kind of want to share, but not sure if this is dissociation or being mentally and physically tired as well. In some ways I haven't really eaten much as well. I kind of had a small bite at lunch, but that's all I've had today, so maybe I'm feeling that sort of lack of energy as well. There's another couple of things I wanted to talk about. I was thinking about recording a vlog earlier in the day, and I was just reflecting, okay, is there anything that I kind of want to talk about? There's a couple of bits. Yeah, maybe a bit more about the dissociation. Yeah, in some ways it feels like there's a gap or a space, if you talk about like a physical space between my mind and myself, that sort of disconnection, where I'm in this sort of haze, and I'm not sure if that is dissociation or not, and perhaps I need to re-look at the definition of it to understand if that's part of what's happening to me, or if that's the only thing happening to me. But it quite feels like that, like I just disconnect and I go into these hazes, and it's not like I'm being mindful or present, but it's almost like I'm in the clouds of my mind, so I'm not fully connected there. And it feels like a meaningless, unimportant haze. It's not like anything beneficial is happening, but yeah, I can even feel it now, really, like the mind is kind of a kite, and it's just getting away from me, and I don't have the energy to or it takes a great deal of energy for me. Like I've got weights and I'm trying to get to the surface. If I'm underwater and I've got these weights around me and I'm trying to break through the surface, it feels like that, with just reining in the mind and connecting and getting access to it. Feels like it's a real struggle. And the difficulty thing is that I don't feel like I have the energy to help myself as well. Like, I was reading the holistic psychologist tweets, as I've been doing recently, and it just reminded me of just, sort of advice and tips, and sometimes there are sort of approaches that are given in there as well. And it just feels like I just don't have the energy to help myself, and maybe that's okay, or I'm not sure, but that's just kind of the way things are at the moment. So it does feel, when I'm feeling in that way, it's just easy to feel, I don't know if helpless is the right word to use. So yeah, I can really feel it now. It just feels like I'm in this haze. I'm just not, my mind is floating somewhere, and I'm just in this sort of, I don't know how to explain it really. I do have counselling this Friday. I have a counselling session, so it'd be good to mention it there, I think. And maybe what I do, this is probably a good idea, is to list a few things on my notebook before the session to bring up there. I used to do this in sessions a while back. I think it would be good for me to do a kind of shape the counselling a bit more and get sort of the most out of it, instead of often, in the session I'll probably talk about things that perhaps don't need talking about, or I'll go off, I'll talk about less important things, maybe, depending on what comes in my mind. So yeah, that's something that would be good to do, talk about that really, and talk about the dissociation, or the sensations I'm feeling at the moment with that, around that stuff with the mind, and also talk about the helplessness as well. Talk through that perhaps would be helpful to get an outside perspective on that. I think that would be good. I can feel it in my voice now as well. My voice feels distant and feels like I can't talk a bit more. It feels, softer than usual, my voice, or more detached from me. Maybe I don't know if part of that is because I haven't really spoken to anybody all day today. It's been very little. I've been kind of on my own pretty much all day, besides going in to get my groceries, and maybe apologising for people being in the way. That was another thing that was a bit difficult there as well. Like people kind of maybe it's worth going into that now, but maybe not. So yeah, today's been difficult, I guess. Sometimes having intentions and not following through on them, and not necessarily I've had a really difficult day. I think when I've had a difficult day, it makes it easier to understand why I couldn't follow through on things. But I guess the intentions of cooking, and maybe there's a good reason for that, because I feel like the protein aspect perhaps is if I was trying to be compassionate with myself, it's a good reason, because I feel like I want to make sort of nutritious meals. It's kind of, that's balanced as well. So I think what I was planning to make today, kind of vegetable sort of curry, it was not going to be super unhealthy, but it's probably lacking in protein perhaps. So maybe, I don't know if it's partly I'm rationalizing not having the energy to cook, and think, oh yeah, it doesn't have that, perhaps I'll cook it another time, and partly there is a good reason for me to doing that as well. So yeah, maybe I can just leave that as it is. And recording podcasts, perhaps it wasn't so attractive, sort of recording with that mindset that has to be a spiritual perspective, and only sort of recently I've thought, oh yeah, I can maybe record a more apt and appropriate sort of episode about the struggles I'm going through right now with being mindful. And it's kind of later in the evening now when I'm recording this, and I'm going to be tired after recording this, and I don't think I'll be able to record that episode. But maybe just having the thought of an enjoyable, what am I trying to say? Perhaps having the thought of the different angle of recording a podcast episode, that's enough. That's enough to acknowledge that I managed to have that today. So maybe that's a bit of a sort of breakthrough or something that's worth acknowledging, that even though I wasn't able to record, but having that sort of thought and approach for my next episode was important, I think. And I think not too long ago I was trying to plan my day for tomorrow as well, thinking about cooking, and I've got to do some laundry also, and cooking, and I've got to return a book to the library, and I guess this goes on to writing. So yesterday I did the letter and then I did a bit of editing, and that kind of, I've had these thoughts sprinkled in the last several episodes about, okay, potentially testing out writing again. And yesterday, for the first time in a long time, managed to sort of write for maybe a good, not like, typing non-stop for 30 minutes, but just being engaged in the writing process for about a longer time than I've been able to do in a while. And I was thinking about writing today, but then I thought, okay, I've got to get groceries and cook, and so I sort of used that for today, which hasn't sort of worked out the way I've wanted. But tomorrow I've got to return, or I've got a fiction book, that same fiction book that I think I mentioned about a month ago or more, that needs returning. And I thought, while I'm at the library, why not try and do some writing there? So the one thing, I know I'm kind of not making sense. I'm jumping back and forth. It's just my energy at the moment. So going back to yesterday. When I was working after writing the letter, I was doing a bit of fiction editing on that novel, and it spurred more thoughts about, if I was to get back into writing, it didn't feel that fulfilling if I wasn't doing the reading as well, if I wasn't doing other areas to improve on the craft. So it feels like I'm not really able to just sort of write in isolation. It feels like part of writing is reading and part of in studying the craft, so it kind of comes as a bit of a bundle, and I'm kind of trying to assess if I'm able to do that. And I was kind of thinking, when I go to the library to return this book, maybe I can try and find a fiction book that I can try and read. So it feels like I'm stepping back into that or trying to entertain that again. And I'm currently sort of listening to audiobooks. That's my form of reading, really. And I think it's one of the reasons I stopped reading altogether, because I struggled to read this book. So I'm gonna, again, maybe I can experiment with, maybe I can just do it and see how it goes, because sometimes thinking is difficult for me at the moment, and perhaps it's either just to try it and then just figure it out afterwards, and it will be clear, or not, maybe not clear, but maybe I'll get some clues, okay, that this is possible or not possible. So yeah, that's the kind of plan for tomorrow, and I can pick up some protein stuff. There's a small shop opposite the library that I can use to pick up the protein stuff to potentially do some cooking on my way back. Cooking when I get back. So that's the kind of plan for tomorrow, really. And maybe I can also have a coffee at the park beforehand, because it's all quite close to me. The library's not too far from the park, so that might be an idea for me to do, to get in some park time, morning light, a bit of an audio book, and then go to the library. I've also got a bit of a fine on this book as well. I forgot to renew it, and it's got a bit of a fine. But yeah, so return this book, do some writing, maybe just plunge into it and try and find a fiction book I want to read, or maybe I can reread one of the books that I've enjoyed in the past that I've got here, a fiction book. Maybe I kind of want to try something new to really test my reading, where I am with reading. Maybe I can't really think through that process. Maybe I'll just stick with that. Yeah, and just see how that goes. If I'm able to, I know I'm being pessimistic, but I just don't think it's possible, because I don't think, I think part of the problem with my whole writing and reading and those activities was that I wasn't able to do it consistently enough and for a reasonable duration for me to get what I wanted out of it. I was kind of, but some part of me is just putting me back to try it again. So maybe I'll just not think about it and just try it and see how it goes. It feels I've got, in some ways, I've got nothing to lose really. I don't really have any huge expectations right now about it. So maybe it's just good for me to try and just, at least right now, it's some form of enjoyment there must be in order for me to pull me back to try and do it. And I think there's maybe some enjoyment still in the activity of writing fiction, even though there's a huge amount of difficulty around it as well. And there's also an attraction to kind of keep myself busy in that way, because I feel like it gives me a bit of focus in my day. So yeah, let's just see how that goes tomorrow. I'm kind of just throwing things up in the air and just seeing how it assembles itself or how things go really. Maybe that's just a better approach for me to do it, since I'm struggling so much mentally, and to sift through and process and organise how that can go. So just to kind of leave this recording, cooking something healthy and having an awareness of nutrition, that's been positive. I'm kind of on that wave at the moment, and that may crash, and that's fine. Right now I'm on that, so that's fine. There's a sort of attractiveness or something built up that's saying to me to go back to try and write, so let's just go with that. The issues around dissociation, it feels like there's still a part of me that wants to sort of help that in my own way, whether it's like having whether it's like a grounding and watching a movie, or it feels like I'm in some ways helpless to it, but also there's some ways where in a very gentle and soft way I'm going to try and sort of help that dissociation, whether it's grounding and watching a movie, or just a few conscious breaths, or just, that's all I've got at the moment for that. But maybe just trying to be aware of dissociation, maybe that's a useful tool to have as well. So there's that kind of difficulty. I'm still struggling a lot with my evenings leading to sleep. I'm finding that I'm not able to sort of disengage from YouTube or reaction videos, and that seems to be my go-to to, maybe if I was a little deeper, I'll do this in another vlog, but underneath the surface of the hour or two before sleep, maybe there's some pain there of, not wanting to go to sleep, and obviously with those reaction videos, there's kind of a hit of dopamine, I think, to watching those. So maybe there's something that needs to be really maybe looked at there. So yeah, I'm just going to perhaps make some pizzas, which I'm going to try and be compassionate about, really, like and yeah, maybe I'm going to try and watch something. I feel like watching all these small YouTube videos and reaction videos, it's not good for my mind to watch it in big amounts, because it's fragmented and stuff. When you're watching something that's longer form, there's a sense of groundedness in there, and it's not like the mind, searching for the next hit of stuff, as people do in anything addictive, even like social media as well. So maybe I'm going to try and watch a movie. That might be useful to do. And then I've got a plan for tomorrow, I guess, and it all depends on how I sleep tonight as well and wake up. But that seems to be it's interesting to see how that goes tomorrow and sort of report back. Anything else I want to say? Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so hopefully aim for a good sleep tonight, and yeah, we'll see how tomorrow goes. It'll be interesting. Yeah, and just not have any expectations.